the top stories. Russian attack in Ukraine has killed 2 people and injured 33 in Kharkiv region of Ukraine. This comes as talks from yesterday between Russia and Ukraine did not result in any ceasefire amid continuation of war. Meanwhile, a plane crash has been reported in the far east of Russia with no report of survivors. The Soviet-era plane allegedly went off the signal with no contact until found by a helicopter. Ukrainian president has approved the controversial bill that has provided independence of anti-corruption agencies within Ukraine, as his decision earlier resulted in critics from EU leaders and citizens engaging in the biggest protest. Israel says it will continue to study Hamas's response to Gaza's ceasefire plan as the war continues and hunger strikes the population within the Strip. The International Criminal Court has convicted 2 individuals for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed against Muslims in the Central African Republic between 2013 and 2014. According to media reports, among them, one has been sentenced to 12 years while another has received 15 years. During Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, cutting tariffs on whiskey, cars and textiles while expanding market access, the deal finalized in May after 3 years of talks, marks the UK's biggest post-Brexit trade agreement. 10 firefighters have been killed in central Turkey as wildfires rage across Turkey and Cyprus, fueled by a severe Mediterranean heat wave, according to Reuters. Turkish Agriculture Minister Ibrahim Yumakli warned that strong winds and extreme temperatures have created extremely dangerous conditions. Greece has said it will be sending a salvage ship to the Red Sea amid recent Houthi attacks. This move is to protect and assist seafarers and global shipping, according to the local shipping minister. The move also follows the 2 ships that were recently sank off by Houthi group. Israel has recalled its negotiating team from Doha for consultations, following Hamas's latest response to a proposed 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. In a statement Thursday, the Israeli Prime Minister's office said the team would return to Israel to review Hamas's reply, while expressing appreciation for the mediation efforts by Qatar, Egypt, and U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff. Earlier in the day, Hamas confirmed it had submitted a new response to ceasefire mediators. According to an Israeli source, the reply appears to allow for continued talks, though key differences remain. The negotiation team is now closely examining those gaps. Meanwhile, Israel's Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, is expected to meet U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff later today in Sardinia, Italy, as efforts continue to reach a breakthrough in the long-stalled truce talks. Now we are joined by Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert joining us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, given the involvement of Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S. in mediating these ceasefire talks, how do you assess the role of third-party actors in this conflict? Yossi?
Yes.
Yossi, I was asking that given the involvement of Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S. in mediating the ceasefire talks, how do you assess the role of third-party actors in this conflict?
Well, third-party actors have a great role in this conflict because they have to make it possible to reach an agreement between us and Hamas on the fate of Gaza Strip and on the fate of the hostages that are still held by Hamas. And unfortunately, what we see until now is that they don't use enough power vis-a-vis Hamas in order to bring Hamas to the difficult decision that they have to take. And Hamas still plays around with them and with us It doesn't propose something that can be used as a basis for reaching an agreement. That's where we stand right now, because Hamas still believes that it can force upon us the end of the war, not only a ceasefire, but the end of the war on their conditions, and this is not going to happen.
Are these mediation efforts likely to succeed, according to you?
Eventually, yes, but not only because they are going to exert more pressure, but more effort, but because we are going to put more pressure on Hamas ourselves, and we are augmenting our pressure over Hamas every day, and we charge them with heavy prices for the continuation of the war, and we are trying very hard to detach their connection with the population in certain parts of Gaza, especially in the south. And this is something that Hamas has to feel, that prolonging the war has a price for them, and that together with the pressure from the mediators is probably going to bear some fruits, but not immediately. It's going to take time. It's already 21 months that we are fighting, and Hamas is not yet defeated, doesn't feel that it's defeated, and because of that, is not ready to make the necessary concessions.
And Yossi, with Israel recalling its negotiating team from Doha, what is the strategy behind this move by Israel?
Well, this is twofold. On the one hand, it is a message to Hamas that we are upset with their attitude and their response to the mediators' proposals. And on the other hand, it's necessary for us to have better connection with the team to make sure that if we are finally going to have an opportunity to enter to the final stages of these negotiations, the details are going to be well understood both by the government and those who are really in charge of the negotiations, and the team that is sitting in Doha and dealing with the details. So it's we gain both messages and coordination that we need. We have to understand the minister that is responsible for that effort is on his way to meet the American envoy Witkoff and other dignitaries in France and in Italy. So there's a need for him to listen, to be able to hear the situation on the ground from the people directly, not through communications.
Yossi, we'll come back to you. Thank you for sharing that for next discussion. An Israeli woman has been charged with plotting to assassinate Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as per prosecutors, according to the indictment. The woman, whose identity is still unknown, was engaged in political protest activities against the government and decided to kill Netanyahu after she was diagnosed with a terminal illness. As per reports, her plan was discovered after she sought to acquire a rocket-propelled grenade to carry out the assassination. The defendant was released to house arrest with a restraining order against approaching the premier and government buildings. Prosecutors requested alongside the indictment to keep her under house arrest until the end of legal proceedings against her, arguing that she could still attempt to carry out her plan if freed. The suspect is the latest in a series of Israelis to be nabbed in recent months for allegedly trying to kill President Netanyahu or inciting to his murder. We go back to our guest discussion with Yossi Cooper-Wasser. Yossi, what's the situation? How's the situation covered in Israel about this assassination attempt?
Well, on the one hand, there's a great concern that people reach this kind of decision that they are ready to carry out as an assassination of the prime minister or anybody else. But this is definitely something totally unacceptable, and it causes a lot of concern. On the other hand, there's this effort to keep it at low key, saying, okay, she was more than 70 years old, and she was a terminal situation, and that's can make some explanation to why she did it, and so on and so forth, which of course is no explanation. And the fact is that the incitement against the government, and specifically against Prime Minister Netanyahu, is crossing any reasonable level. So many people talk about the need to get rid of him in any means that it's really totally unacceptable and very dangerous. Because if this is going to happen, God knows what's going to follow it. And the fact is that the people from the protest against the government was those who gave information about her plans to the security services, because they realized too that if she would have done what she was planning to do, the consequences are going to be beyond anything that can be expected. And that's why they did it, and saved us from this terrible situation.
Yossi, what does this reveal about the growing political tensions and divided support for current government within Israel?
Well, the Israeli public is divided for a long time, like 50-50 between, God knows what the situation right now, because there are all kinds of polls. But basically, the population is divided. 50% are anti-Netanyahu, 50% are pro-Netanyahu. And this causes a lot of problems, because this part that is against Netanyahu is not ready under any circumstances to sit in the government of Netanyahu. And this caused the paralysis of the political system for a long time, and a lot of tensions. And the tensions have reached the level of several attempts to hit Netanyahu, which is unbelievable, but this is where we stand right now. There got to be a call from all leaders, which I didn't hear clear enough until now, to calm down on both sides of the political aisle. This is totally unacceptable, extremely dangerous. Our history tells us that most of the disasters that the Jewish people suffered in the past were because of internal rift. And I sincerely hope that people are going to wake up early enough before it's too late.
Yossi, thank you for sharing that. Please stay with us as we'll come back to you for our next discussion. Damascus top diplomat Asad al-Shaibani is set to meet an Israeli minister in Paris to discuss the recent sectarian violence in Syria's south. According to reports, U.S. Special Envoy for Syria, Tom Barak, will facilitate these talks. The U.S. brokered talks would reportedly be the first ministerial meeting between the new Syrian authorities and Israel. Reports indicate that Shaibani and Israel's Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer are expected to discuss southern Syria, where deadly sectarian violence earlier this month prompted Israeli intervention. Israel had launched several airstrikes on Syrian government positions in Sweda, a Druze majority province in the country's south, saying it wanted to protect the minority community after sectarian clashes had erupted. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert. Thank you, Yossi, for staying with us. Now, Syria and Israel is preparing for their first ministerial talks. What do you believe it can be the objective of both sides for this historic meeting?
Well, we have to understand that we have a lot of common interest with the current Syrian regime. We have some concerns and suspicions about its intentions, but at the same time we have common interests. First of all, both of us want to make sure that Iran doesn't reappear in the Syrian scene, and that is kept out of it, and this is the most important interest of Israel and also of Mr. Shara. Secondly, we want to make sure that Syria is not being used by the Iranians and their surrogates in order to deliver weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. And this is something, again, that we both share the interest in this context. So this is going to be discussed. Beyond that, we want to see stability and security in Syria, and we want to make sure that the minorities are safe, especially the Druze sect. That is, we have some commitment to the Druze because they fight now in our military, and they are part of Israel. The Jews in Israel are part of Israel, and they have very close relationships with the Druze in Syria, and that causes us to show some commitment to their safety and well-being. And we want to make sure that this is respected also by Shara. What he says is always saying that he's committed to that, but he's not always doing what he's saying that he's committed to. So we have to make sure that his mouth and his heart are in the same place, and his hands are in the same place. And that's something that we want to see as a result of this meeting. We had clashes with the Syrians in the last week because there was a massacre against the Druze in their area, as you mentioned, the area of Sweda. And we had to take action in order to clarify to the Shara regime that we should not tolerate such a situation. And I think the message was well received and led to some sort of ceasefire that is not very well kept, but at least it's much better. The situation is much better than what it was when the massacre was going on. This was became possible because of the intervention of Israel. That we also let the forces of Shara go down to the south and secure the ceasefire. And we are going to speak with him also about the need to make sure that no forces that are hostile to Israel are going to be deployed in the southern part of Syria, just adjacent to our border. And I think he understands it and he accepts it. And I think this is going to be agreed upon between us and the Syrians in those discussions. So there's room to believe that we can make some progress in establishing understandings with the government in Syria.
Yes.
We have also to remember that the Americans are very much interested in seeing that happening, so they are going to invest in that.
Yes. Thank you very much, Yossi Cooper-Wasser, for sharing that insight and staying with us throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. Russian attacks have killed at least 5 people, including 3 members of a displaced family in separate attacks across Ukraine's war-scarred east, as per reports. A couple and their 36-year-old son were killed in a village in the eastern Kharkiv region, while 2 more women were killed in the Donetsk region. Russia has stepped up drone and missile attacks on Ukraine more than 3 years into its invasion, even as the warring parties meet for ceasefire talks. Now we're joined by Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Ukrainian Defense Minister, joining us live from Latvia. Thank you, Glenn, for joining us again. Good to see you. What more can you tell us about this news?
Well, it's part of a big problem at the moment, in that you have 3 cities that are really close to the border. I mean, Kharkiv is now within drone distance and is being covered by drones and Sumy every single day. One of my colleagues in Kherson actually looked out of the window and could count 19 Russian drones over the top of them a couple of weeks ago. So this is the attack is just what Russia is after, attacking civilians to try and actually change the paradigm within inside Ukraine, and intentionally to try and get people to actually to fight back against the Zelensky government. And this is one of the reasons why we have the riot, not riots, but marches and people on the streets that we've had in the last week.
And Yossi, what's your assessment on this this news?
Well, as you know, there is a discord between the Zelensky government and society at the moment, caused by Zelensky trying to signing into law something that put the 2 anti-corruption bureau organizations under control of the government, and people do not like that because they see this as going against the European Union direction that they want, which of course is just exactly the same as has happened in the Yanukovych regime and caused the Maidan, and has happened recently in Georgia. So people don't want this. They want to go to the European Union and they want to fight back against corruption. Russia understands this discord, and so is going to put pressure as much as possible onto the civilian population to try and see if it can in some way crack open society. It's not going to work. I can tell you that it's not going to work. People will just get more and more annoyed with Russia. But they are still getting more and more annoyed with Zelensky at not taking proper measures to fight back against Russia.
Thank you, Glenn, for sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. At a high-profile AI summit in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump has issued a strong warning to tech giants like Google and Microsoft, urging them to stop hiring in countries like India and China and prioritize American citizens for jobs. He accused major firms of exploiting U.S. freedoms while outsourcing labor and profits abroad. Trump unveiled 3 new executive orders aimed at reshaping the AI landscape. The centerpiece, titled "Winning the Race," focuses on expanding U.S.-based AI infrastructure and easing domestic regulations. Another order mandates political neutrality in AI systems funded by the government, with Trump declaring that they will be getting rid of woke. He also proposed boosting the global reach of American-made AI while cutting foreign dependency. Now we're joined for this discussion by Raymond Vickery. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Raymond, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, President Trump's warning to tech giants like Google and Microsoft to prioritize American workers. So how do you think this America First approach will impact the global AI industry?
Well, thanks very much for having me. I think that you have to look at the broader picture here first, and that is that President Trump is bent on destroying the multilateral trade and economic system that we've had in place since World War II. First with the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and then with the World Trade Organization, and moving on to all multilateral institutions of the United Nations. And his view is one of Fortress America, that we don't need anybody else, we can go it alone, that only thing that is important is what happens in a particular transaction. This is the real estate developers' approach. There are winners and losers, and we have to be the winner. This is antithetical to the cooperative approach, which has promoted peace and prosperity around the world since World War II. And it doesn't stop with hiring by Google and Microsoft. The next step, of course, will be H-1B visas, and really shutting off the kind of flow of services which we have had. President Trump has already taken on the good side of the equation with his many tariffs, and now he's moving quite logically in his own mind, but disastrously, I believe, to services. The answer here is for great democracies, whether they be in India or Western Europe, Japan, Australia, to band together to resist this kind of my way or the highway transactional approach, and try to restore some sense of cooperation rather than the transactional approach which is Donald Trump's. It remains to be seen if this can be done. The immediate reaction, of course, is in most cases is, well, if America First is the rule in the United States, it'll be India first here or Japan first, and the system which we've had will be very, very much weakened. So this is a part and parcel of the Donald J. Trump approach to international affairs, and it is time for others to try to fill the vacuum which he has created.
And Raymond, now looking at this impact of this, what are the potential long-term consequences for international collaborations in technology development?
Well, I think they're disastrous. The United States has led in innovation because it has been able to work with the best and the brightest in terms of innovation, whether it be AI or other technical areas, by tapping into this great brain power. And if what you do is just cut it off and say, again, Fortress America economically and security wise, the whole thrust toward economic development will be slowed, it will be hampered, and it will have very, very harmful effects to people, average men and women around the world, if this is allowed to continue. So there has to be pushback. There cannot be the complacency to say, oh, well, I'll just keep my head down and I won't worry about the underlying values which are important here. That isn't going to work because Donald J. Trump has in mind a imperialistic, really authoritarian model that he is trying to thrust upon the United States and the world. And it is up to nations of goodwill, democracies around the world, to be able to defend democratic values, values that have to do with individualism, have to do with the ability to have freer trade, which has served us so well for the past 80 years.
Yes, indeed. Always good to hear from you, Raymond Vickery. That was Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. Well, that's all we have time for.